The Guns on Pegs podcast is brought to you by ITAP Group.
Hello and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast. My name's George Brown and I'm joined once again by Chris Horn. Hi Chris.
How are we doing, George?
Yep, very good, thank you, very good.
We're delighted to be joined again by Sir Brandon Lewis, former Conservative MP and now Chairman of the Country Food Trust. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you for having me. It's great. Good. Looking forward to it.
Right, now, I think probably most of our listeners are familiar with the Country Food Trust. But for the uninitiated, Can you please just give a quick overview of what the Trust is, what it does?
Basically, we take game, venison and birds from shoots, and we prepare it and give it to food banks. So we're making sure that good quality protein. I think we're the only people with ambient, good quality protein going to food banks. You think food banks are generally carbohydrates, processed food, canned food, some fruit and veg, but we make sure there's good quality protein. And it's making sure that the birds that we shoot are in the food chain, which is what shooting was originally about. So it's a great charity doing some great. So we did about 500,000 meals last year. Ambitions to continue to grow that and develop that.
What's the total now at? Do you know?
What, meals?
Yeah.
Like 7 million.
That's a big number, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've been going with last year was our 10th anniversary.
Yeah.
So
phenomenal.
Amazing.
Some
you mentioned ambient work just then. I imagine a few people are going, I heard that word.
What is ambient?
Yeah.
So basically, when the final product, which people, if you look on our website, they'll see the packages it comes in, is you can open it, and if you want to, you can literally just eat it. It is ready to eat. But you can also put it in a microwave, put it in a casserole, make a curry with it, whatever. But if somebody's homeless and they want and they're getting protein from a food bank, they can literally open the packet and eat it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need refrigeration, or it's cooked in advance and then it's sealed up.
And it comes in the bag like the sort of Tilda rice bags is probably
basically that's a good And if they go to the game fair, then our team will be there and they'll be able to see them and on the website and it's a really good product. I've got friends of mine who I've been saying to me, get involved with the Country Food Trust, support it, and you give them a few packets. People come out and go, "God, she made a really good bolognese or a really nice curry." It's really nice.
I said,
game's great. I mean, I like game anyway. It's why it was when I was asked if I would come in as chairman, I was delighted to do so because I knew about the trust before, from the phenomenal, the great man that is Charles Walker, and Andrew Stone, through Charles, but because game is such a good, and we need. That's why I love places like Fallow and that, getting people to eat game and meat and understand it's really healthy stuff. It's really good food.
And those ambient pouches, when Tim Adams first developed those first couple of recipes, I bought a load of them from the charity, and I would leave them when I was living in London, leave them in the cupboard at home. And if I got back late after a pub session one night, it was just the most perfect thing because I remember the curry at the time had like lentils and stuff in it, like extra protein basically. And you could just tear the corner, whack it in the microwave for 2 minutes, bang, and you were eating a really good meal. Yeah. And it was genuinely like, how is this not a mainstream thing? It's the sort of thing that...
Well, our chief exec, SJ, who's a superstar, told a story at our annual dinner last year or our biannual dinner actually to be precise, but anyway, she told this story about somebody who had been to see a surgeon. I think they had cancer and had to have treatment, but their protein levels were too low.
Right.
And they'd gone to a food bank, got some of our protein. I think in this case it was mainly venison actually. And within a few weeks their protein levels were back up. The difference it's so good for you.
Yeah.
So it's whether it's the birds or the venison, it is good. I've eaten it. Yes, it's a great product.
So you sort of hinted at this, but I wanted to ask, you were in government for a really long time, held some really important cabinet positions. I imagine that you can sort of take your pick of roles now. So what was it about the CFT chairmanship that made you think, that's one of the things I want to fill my time with?
It was a mixture of things. So I wanted to do, I wanted to do something that's sort of what I would call public service, sort of charitable to work. And I wanted to do something that related to something I enjoy and I like. So I didn't want to I got asked to get involved with a few charities, really good charities, but not areas I have any knowledge of or know about. and I got asked to get involved with the Country Food Trust, which I knew about because a couple of years before, Charles Walker actually had come shooting with me. At the end of the day, I talked to everybody about the Country Food Trust. I thought, what a brilliant idea. This is why surely every shoot gives you the birds. And Charles was saying, no. I said, well, look, and I said to Charles, if I can ever help, I'd love to help. And then after I'd stood down for government, Charles phoned me up one day and said, "You remember when you said?"
So Charles,
and, absolutely great man. And so I did. And Charles is still a trustee and a great man. And I got to know Andrew Stone through that, who's a phenomenal supporter of the trust. And we've got a really good team of trustees. We're very fortunate. We've got great trustees who've gone before us, including Chris, I know, who sort of got it into being and where we are. And I just thought it was a really good cause at a number of levels. One is having being a member of Parliament in a constituency like Great Yarmouth, where we've got 2 of the top 10 most deprived wards in the country actually in Great Yarmouth. I've been in food banks. I've seen what happens in food banks, how they work, and the difference they can make to people's lives. So the concept of supplying them with good quality protein was to me a no-brainer. But also because I love country sports, and although I don't partake in all country sports, I love all country sports. I've never hunted, but I go and support the hunt. I love seeing the hunt. So for me, be able to support country sports in a way, and I think this is important because it's an easy target for people who want to stop people shooting or whatever part of country sports. And this is a way of just reminding people this has a purpose. It is about food on the table. And through the Country Food Trust, we're not just making sure the food stays in the food cycle, we're making sure it's going to people who are in food poverty, the people most in need. So if we want to protect and continue shooting in the future, actually making sure that the game we produce, we create, that we shoot, is in the food chain, I think is hugely important.
Well, this touches into a series of conversations we've been having in recent episodes. So a few episodes ago, Chris said, shoots are in the entertainment business. We then had a piece of correspondence.
Out of context, it doesn't quite work, but yes.
We then had a piece of correspondence that said, no, shoots are in the wellness business. It's all about mental health and getting out with your friends and getting out in the fresh air in the countryside and so on. I think that there's probably an argument that more shoots should think of themselves as being in the food production business rather than either of those two things.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I subscribe to. I mean, I would argue if I was going to be generous to somebody arguing it's about entertainment, if it's entertainment in the sense of the wellness argument, you are out enjoying yourself,
having a nice
in the
time
countryside, having a nice time with friends. And there is definitely something about that. My wife has always been hugely supportive of me spending time, and she comes shooting sometimes because she likes being outside, and her view is it is good for you to get out and have that kind of fresh air and all that. But that does connect into, there is also a wellness connection because the meat is really healthy. It is good for you. It's good, clean, high, venison, if you like, on that side of it, is probably the best. It is without, I think, unarguably now the best, health-wise red meat you can eat. Yeah. Leanest, healthiest, good for your heart, etc. So, but it is ultimately what you are doing produces food, and if it's not being used for food, then what is it for? And that is where I think shooting it is at risk of becoming an easy target for people.
Yeah.
So I think it is important. Why I come back to what I've said before, which is if you're new to shooting, or even if you're not and you're going to a shoot, ask what they do with the birds.
Yeah.
And make sure they're in the food chain. And if they're not already got an answer to that, and Eat Wild is great for promoting using game, but it's only the Country Food Trust that actually provides that game meat to the food chain. And
this is at the crux of one of the biggest arguments going, because I don't think we could even convince ourselves that we're in farming, from the point of like the bird is worth, this is my point the other day about the entertainment. It's not farming because the bird is worth less after it's shot than before it's shot. Yeah. Whereas if it was farming, it'd be the other way around. But I think that we have such a duty to look after that side of things that it's possibly the biggest weakness, potentially, as a debate, a biggest weakness out of everything. It just undermines absolutely everything if it's not done properly.
Because it looks gratuitous.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And particularly where if somebody wants to attack, a high value. I mean, first of all, there's an education thing that not all shoots are high value shoots. Some of the most fun days I've had have been very small, family run, organised days. In fact, one of my favourite shoots of the year is a very small, family run day. But when you go on these big shoots, for the shoot to say they can't say to the guns, for effectively the cost of one extra bird per gun, we're going to make sure all this food goes through the Country Food Trust to a food bank, just not viable.
Yeah.
But that's on us as guns to question and challenge the shoot in a nice, positive way around, look, what do you do with the birds that are spare? If they're all being used, great, they're in the food chain. But if they're not, we're here to help. That's what the Country Food Trust is there for. We help the shoot, we help the shooting, and we help those in food poverty who need that protein.
Well, I was thinking about this on the train on the way up here today, and in some ways it's an incredibly sad situation for two reasons that the Country Food Trust needs to exist. Number one, the food poverty situation is dire and doesn't seem to be getting better anytime soon. But then the fact that we do have this oversupply of game, that there isn't a real market for it in that sense. So just on food poverty, you said you had experience of it in your time in Parliament. Why is it so hard to tackle? Why is it something that it's a nut that we seem unable to crack as a society?
I think there's a number of things. If I take the unpopular view that as a politician I probably would never have said whilst I was elected, because I would have got absolutely smashed for it. But I do remember once being on BBC Norfolk Radio, and on that day the front page of the local news, the regional newspaper, had a picture of a street in Great Yarmouth, and it was talking about it being one of the most deprived wards in the country. And I did get a bit of abuse because I actually pointed out, if you look at the houses in that street, every single one of them's got a Sky satellite dish. And people do make choices. And you do hear stories about people going in with an iPhone, with a pack of cigarettes, using a food bank. People make choices. So there is that's the hard, if you like, unpopular side. But the reality is people make choices around what they do. And if they're making good or bad choices, you still want them to have good, a healthy diet and ability to eat. But there are people who really do struggle. In a constituency like Great Yarmouth, you'll have people where the average salary is below the national average. You've got a constituency there where you've got agricultural, as you and I, George, from your friends in that part of the world. You've got very seasonal employment with the tourism industry. The core industry that used to be there from fishing just isn't there anymore and hasn't been for decades. Oil and gas and renewables and the supply line for that is really been picking up over the last decade or so. But you have people there who will have real challenges about how they make ends meet. That means they have to make difficult choices, and food banks have a role. And I'm quite proud of the fact, actually, it was the government I was in when we came in after 2010 that opened up the ability for people to get access to food banks, because it was actually quite restricted before 2010.
Is it really?
Yeah. So one of the things, people have a go at the Conservative government, more food banks and more people using food banks, because we actually opened up and it was restricted who could go.
Idea.
Oh yeah.
So it was sort of means tested before.
I remember that.
Kind of. It was quite a complicated thing, but and who could set up a food bank and who they could,
Right.
I'm really surprised because I really remember when I first became a trustee of the Country Food Trust, that argument being used against the Tories.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Of the number of food banks under the Tories. And because I remember speaking to a couple of people about this trustee role that I had. And
I've always thought, I think we did a good job making more available. But, look, there's no getting away from it. We would all love to say there would be no need for food banks. But the reality is there is a need. And what we do at the Country Food Trust is make sure that some of the people most in need in food poverty have access to and are provided with good quality protein.
Yeah.
And it's tasty. It's not just this is good for you. It's genuinely, as you say, you chose
well,
to eat
I tell you what, if you want a feel good day, go and spend the equivalent you would have done on Keeper's Tips on your pouches, and then take them to a food bank in your area and talk to people that are recipients of those. And I remember doing it in Marden, where I live, and I took loads along. I literally tried to fill up their thing. And I spoke to these people, and it was just one of the most humbling. It was tough. It was. Oh yeah. It's really tough.
And the thing, but there is a virtuous circle. So in a ideal world, and we've got, we're now very fortunate. We've done well enough, and the team have now got a sort of fleet of these chillers, we can go and pick things up from all over the country and help the shoots in that way. But in an ideal world, the unique thing you can do is if you are a shoot and you are producing an excess of birds, we can come and collect them, process them, package them up, prepare it, take it back to that shoot. And that gamekeeper can take that protein to their local food bank. So you are then reconnecting. If you want to, look at it this way. I mean, we as a trust want to supply food to people in need, obviously.
Yeah.
But we can do it in such a way where we can say to a gamekeeper or the shoot organizer, captain, landowner, whatever, if you want, we'll bring it back to you. You take it to the food banks. You reconnect your shoot with the food bank. So you get that part of the community who do not understand why a shoot is a good thing reconnected.
And this is so important. I mean, I had a really weird experience recently where I was trying to get a lot more game through the CFT into our area, and a couple of them weren't that receptive.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked. I was like, look, you just tell me how much you want and I'll get it there. And I couldn't believe how I had to fight really hard, and actually with a couple of them, I completely failed. And I've now got a load going into Maidstone where they were really happy, and the person on email just got it.
Yeah.
And it was such a shame. You mentioned then vans, chillers.
Yes.
Yes, I want to pick up on that.
Yeah, this is obviously a big topic. Like, so last October the 26th, I think, was at the point when the EU said, or the European countries were like, no more game, we've got enough. And obviously for the UK game market, I forget what the latest figures are, but for anyone listening who isn't aware, we send so much of our game abroad to the point where it's a huge weakness.
I think Leon said it's like 90% of UK game goes
most
abroad.
dogs go abroad,
Yeah, and so it doesn't take a genius to work out that if with the Brexit risks that occurred and the extra paperwork and everything else, but any further legislation on that or any changes in culture or taste from Europe, we've got a monstrous problem, because how the idea that we're going to do sort of 10x of our game consumption here in the UK, God only knows. So talk to us about chiller fans, because it sounds to me like
they're part of the solution. And I remember actually at the game fair last year, I think it was, our chief exec SJ was approached by somebody who had an enormous amount of game in their chillers that they needed to find a home for, because exporting it to Europe would just not, because they're overloaded themselves.
Yeah.
And we in the UK don't consume as much game, which is great, because it is really good quality, and it's a great healthy meat. It's very I mean, I personally genuinely like it. If I'm in a restaurant in London in the right city, I will order game over anything else. Because it's really good meat, and it is good for you. And we also have a problem with deer management. So it's part of the solution of dealing with deer management, which is good for the environment, good for our countryside, and therefore ends up being good for our health, because you've got a really healthy product going into the food chain. So, what we've managed to do over the last year is we've, I can't remember exactly how many we've got. We've got more vehicles now, chillers, that we can go and pick up, collect. We can then deal with the processing, get it all packaged up, prepared into the recipes.
So is that from shoots?
The food banks or, I mean, a lot. There's a predominance at the moment is on venison, but yes, from shoots.
That's fantastic.
And so you're not using are you using collection points as well? Like, I mean, could anyone access this? If the shoot came to you and said, we'd love to make sure our game went through.
We will do what we can, and we will help the shoot make it work. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's a cost.
Obviously, there's an issue if the shoot has 5 surplus birds.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, it's got. Yeah, everyone's got to understand it's got to work for the economics of feeding people.
But we will work on a. We'll look at the area, and even if a shoot has a reasonable number of birds but not enough, we can you
find
look others around, and you can create the critical mass to make it work. Yeah.
Okay. So
I don't think there's anywhere in England or Scotland at the moment that we can't cover.
Right.
It would just about cover England and Scotland.
Brilliant.
Pretty
well, that's
fully.
A pretty decent base.
Yeah.
So then, so a shoot rings you up and says, "Oh, we'd love to put our game through the Country Food Trust." There's a cost to processing that game, and for the CFTs to then buy it back from a game dealer.
Yeah, per pack, The final pack that
Yeah.
you've tried is about £2.25, £2.50 is what it costs to produce that.
From
pack.
bird in the feather
Yeah.
to package meal.
Yeah,
So you're basically looking for X per bird.
exactly. Yeah, it works out on an average shoot, on a shoot. It's roughly an extra bird per gun per shoot day.
Right. And I mean, it seems to me like the most obvious thing is for a shoot to just build that into the price and then be proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, what I would love to see would be even in the first step. Not every shoot, not even to say to every gun you've got to pay this bit extra. Just put it on the bottom of the bill for the shoot day as an optional extra.
Well,
I did this in a business I had years ago. We did an optional charitable donation. You put it on. The client could take it off, but it was put on. And 99% of people just say, yeah, fine. Lots of shops now do it. When you pay your bill in the shop, there's that optional 99p or whatever it is. Something like that. If most shoots did that, I think most guns would say, yeah, fair enough. Particularly on the bigger shoots where people, some of these shoots people spend a lot of money. Yeah, a couple of £100. It's worth it to make sure that product's been properly
presumably
used.
Donations to the CFT from businesses would be...
We are a charity. So
you're a charity.
All the benefits of a charitable donation.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. This whole thing about putting it on the bottom of the bill has always slightly bothered me because I think that it's a great solution. But I think the fact that it isn't just considered as part of the nature of the agreement within this shoot.
The cost of shooting is in some way the bird that hits the deck has got to be eaten.
Yeah, I think as I put on our WhatsApp group earlier, I don't know if it's a good analogy or not, but if you were at a restaurant and they said, "Oh, you want us to take the bins out? I'll put that on the bottom of the bill." Like, they're not.
The only problem with that is I don't like equating
the
pheasants to the bin.
Of course, but you're talking after the event.
Yeah,
and so. I think the idea that it sort of needs to be that it would even be positioned as an extra is kind of a weird thing. I can see.
Yeah, I get that. But my point is more from one of the things I've heard from a few shoots is, I don't know. It is an expensive thing to. And I've said to a few shoots and gamekeepers, I'm not asking you to pay for this. My view is we as guns should be paying for this. So I'm not asking you to take this out of your. Make it clear. This is what this is. It's a separate line on the bill.
But what you're.
But ultimately, ideally, the shoot builds it into its cost base and makes that donation every year. But I think there's one step at a time.
That conversation you were kind of just alluding to of the "I don't know" response essentially is "I don't know whether the guns will accept this," right? Is kind of the predicament and the seriously sad predicament that we're in, because I don't know that the guns are going to accept this increase in price to make sure that the game goes into the food chain, whereas they'd be quite happy to pay less, come here and then literally not care. I mean, that's actually...
I think that's a danger for shooting.
It's huge.
Because what guns have to realise is that's the attitude that will be the end of shooting.
Yeah.
This is a way of making sure food going into the food chain, and look, if you want to be really mercenary about it, more members of parliament who are visiting their food banks, understanding where that food comes from, and that actually shooting plays a positive part in that, and this is a positive thing shooting does, is a good thing. It's not necessarily going to get more members of parliament or local government people or whatever thinking, I want to start shooting, but understanding that shooting plays an important part in our community, it's a positive thing. So, I would argue, I'm entirely biased on this, but if you look at what we do at the Country Food Trust is the long-term solution to the challenge shooting has around its legitimacy.
Yeah, I could completely agree. And the idea that someone could possibly say, if they haven't got a known sustainable outlet, and I use the word sustainable in the strongest form, because a lot of shoots know that their outlet for their game isn't that sustainable, they found out last year.
Absolutely.
So if they haven't got a known sustainable outlet for their game, and they're saying, I don't know if I can put this on the price, I think they need to question whether they should even be in existence in the first place.
Yeah. And that's why I say to guns, anybody listening to this, it doesn't have to be, it's not an adversarial thing, but just ask the question of your shoot, what do you do with your surplus birds? Now, there are shoots where all the birds are taken by the guns, the beaters, and they're in the food chain in that way. Okay, fine, great, that's brilliant, that's what it's about. But if they've got surplus birds and they can't answer what they're doing with them, why are you shooting them?
Yeah, but I think so many of them, they do worry about that, and they worry about asking the guns. But if you haven't got the solution, you've got no choice. You've got to ask your guns. Yeah. But also, I think if you actually stomached it and had a conversation with each gun and said, this is what we're going to do, you're never going to get a no.
No.
I
And
wonder
I've
if
said that
putting
is
it on
where
the bill is the right moment. I reckon I'd go round at 11s or lunchtime or whatever, effectively with like a collecting hat, but asking people to get their checkbook out.
well, that's
Because the social pressure.
But
how
they'd hate the experience. If it was a commercial shoot, going back to my entertainment point,
Yeah.
they wouldn't want to do it. But if you positioned it as, by the way, right, lads, this is going into dog food, or unless you get your wallets out of your pocket, we're going to do a good service with it. Everyone's getting their wallet out, right?
Yeah, so I will say, I mean, the first time I was introduced to it was as I said earlier, was Charles Walker at the end of the day explaining what the Country Food Trust is and what it does. And we all literally straight away went, and actually somebody else who was on that shoot is now one of our trustees as well.
Oh, really?
And it does go back to, we all went, yeah, absolutely, of course, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't we? So there is, I'm with you, George. I think there is an element of it, 11s or lunch, whatever, saying to guns, look, this is the opportunity, but we need to find a way. And one of the challenges for the charity is how we find a more uniform, more structured way of everybody understand that we are the only outlet for this. And this is a service that it's good for the food chain, it's good for shooting, it's good for country sports, it's good for those in need. Why would you look anywhere else? Why not do this?
I know this isn't really Country Food Trust's area. It's more an Eat Wild question, I suppose. So we should probably have Leon back on at some point and ask him this as well. But much has been made in the last few years about cost of living crisis. Game is plentiful and nutritious. Should be cheap.
Yeah.
Isn't for some reason.
Well, I mean, comparatively versus chicken, lamb, beef, in the last few years, that gap has shrunk like there's no tomorrow. Yeah.
But why do you think we struggle to get the general public to embrace game? Why is that proving such a challenge, do you think? Because, Leon and the rest of those guys have been, banging that drum pretty hard for the last few years. And it does seem like
I think there is an element in what struck me in the last period is I can't cook at all. I'm blessed with my wife, who's a phenomenal cook, but I am addicted to various cooking programs. When you see chefs on TV, like James Martin is a really good example, talking about seasonal food and game as he does, and there's others. That's really good because it means on a Saturday morning at prime time, kind of where the family's watching, they're what's that then? I'll think about that. And more restaurants and well-known chefs talking about game in whatever format, I think is a good thing. The real difference, I think, in the last few decades, I've seen this from a different angle, was the growth of supermarkets. In the sense of, like, 30 years ago, my family was in the confectionery industry. Tesco's, Sainsbury's, the big supermarkets were not the big clients. It was wholesalers and cinemas and things like that. Those supermarkets have grown instead. And if you go in the supermarket, most of the food that's available when most people do their shopping isn't game.
Yeah.
So access to game is harder. And if you are producing en masse, processing game isn't as easy as processing, the chickens and the cows and things like that. So I sort of get where it's come about, but that's where we who enjoy that sport and who are, taking it back to Chris's point earlier, for want of a better phrase, farming that meat, that game product, we have a duty to do what we can to ensure it's being put to the right use, and that is the food chain.
Can I ask a question using your political experience? When you're thinking about being an MP and you're able to demonstrate how much game has gone into that constituency through the Country Food Trust, surely that message to a local MP is really, really powerful to change the narrative over their consideration of shooting generally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are members of Parliament, cross-party, this is a non-party political issue. Parliamentarians who have, it's more about the type of constituency you've got. So there are parliamentarians who will understand country sports because they matter to their constituencies. And there are other parliamentarians, and they could be of any party, but if they've got a non-rural, sort of urban type of constituency, there'll be less understanding of what country sports is and why it matters to a community economically, socially, etc. So for them, where they will have food banks, and urban areas will generally have a food bank, seeing the positive side of what country sports is providing, i.e. meat for the people who need it most, is a really positive thing. And look, I've seen images and pictures and stories of members of parliament who are in a food bank with Country Food Trust product. Then it's going to be much easier to say to them down the line, look, you shouldn't be anti-country sports. It's country sports that provided that food for your constituents. And you remember you came and you experienced that. And and it just connects in a positive way. Whereas for some members of parliament and other people in other walks of life, if they've not seen that experience and all they've read is something about, a shoot that's charging X amount of money for very wealthy people, it feels very distant from, but that's very different to the people in my constituency, my neighbours, my community benefit from this country sport because this is what puts food on their table.
It seems to me like there's a sort of huge community opportunity here to loop in MPs to purchases of CFT pouches into food banks or to make them aware.
We do. We will often, when we're doing foods, we'll often invite the members of parliament to come to the food bank to be part of handing over the food.
But at a local level, all listeners can help with that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea. You mean listeners could? Because you can buy the pouches off the CFT website, right?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, but
so they could
have
them delivered to the local MP's constituency office.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, and then be like, "Oi, send these to the food banks that you care about the most."
Yeah.
But if you did your collection on your sweepstakes and stuff, in your syndicate that year, and you said, "Right, guys, we've collected, I don't know, I'm coming up with a figure. I've got no idea what the normal is, but anyway, let's call it $2,000, right?" If you've got $2,000, that's a decent amount of pouches.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
and then if you're able to say, copy in the MP, we're sending £2,000 worth of high quality protein to the food banks in the area on behalf of X syndicate.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm at the risk of upsetting my fellow trustees and my chief executive. I'll play a slight devil's advocate here, which is the thing with some of the whip round is there are a lot of very, very important, very, very good charities in the country.
I know.
Game Conservancy Trust, the Gamekeepers Trust, etc., who benefit from those. I wouldn't want to see them lose out because they do an important job, which is why I think what we do, I would approach in a different way, which is we as guns enjoy our shooting experience. We need to understand and value what the long-term future of that is, and if we want to protect it, we need to be...
It's a cost.
There is a cost to that,
yeah.
And we also need to understand the impact on our community and putting food on the table of those most in need. Shooting was about putting food on the table, and it still should be. And so I think we have a duty to respect that. It doesn't necessarily mean, so we can do that in conjunction as well as.
I'm glad you raised that point
because charities.
I did think that as I was saying it. This is the tricky thing about shooting. We've got so many causes that need to be supported that each sort of one has to have.
You sort of have to compartmentalize them a bit, don't you? Do you remember? I can't remember if this is something that we came up with or not. Do you remember the idea of being pheasant neutral?
Oh yeah, 1 for 1.
1 for 1. So if you shoot a pheasant, you put £1 in a jar in your kitchen. Or you try and work out how many pheasants you've shot that year, and for each one you put £1 in. Yeah. What did you say the cost was?
$2.25, $2.50 per pouch.
But that's for a pouch because also you do fresh meat or frozen meat to actual kitchens, food kitchens that are the bigger food banks.
Yeah.
And then obviously it's a lot less.
It's a lot less. Yeah.
So if you. I mean, a pound's probably slightly outdated.
I know
now,
this is this was 6 years ago. So.
Well, yeah, 6 years ago it's probably about 10. It's 10p in it, but call it £1.50.
Yeah.
The point is that if you're able to look at it simply that way, that is actually all you probably need to do to be neutral.
You go, okay, I've been on 10 days this year. I've shot an average of, I don't know, whatever it is, 10 birds a day. So I've shot 100 pheasants. I've eaten 30 of them myself. So I've got 70 pheasants that I need to make up for, so to speak, in order to be pheasant neutral. So it's 70 times £1.50.
And the feel-good point here is that the CFT is sending game all over the country to lots of different areas and thousands to all these different areas. And so if someone is doing a lot, you can get that back to their area. Yes. I mean, if someone sends you £20 and says, "Can you send 20 birds into Dorset?" You're unlikely to say yes. However, you can probably respond going, "Don't worry, we're actually sending 2,000 next week."
Yeah. That's the benefit of having that spread across the whole country. Is we can work to to work with shoots or donors to make sure that the food we're providing is, if they want it to go to their area or the area the food has come from in the first place.
I think the local point is really, really interesting, and I think that's a lovely thing to link it back to the area that you're in. So you could say this is local venison or local pheasant or whatever.
Yeah. And most of the people who benefit from food banks are generally not going to be people who necessarily know anything about shooting or think about the shoots in their area, and it reconnects the community back to each other.
Yeah, and I think
well.
Local food is, I think, a hugely important thing. I've written about it before, but am I right in saying that there are some? Am I right in saying you've been sending pouches to Ukraine?
Yes, we have actually. Yeah. Again, our chief exec went out and took meals out to the front line.
Wow.
It's certainly on our Instagram page.
Yeah, I've seen them on social media.
It's quite moving, actually, when you see the frontline soldiers. Yeah, we sent a load of pouches out to the front line. So, again, about talking about giving good quality, high protein food to those most in need. And, I'm involved in business in Ukraine as well. And it's what the people of Ukraine are going through is something else. Their fortitude it's humbling.
Yeah. I mean, it must be so. It's almost trite to say it. It's so incredibly hard out there. But I make venison bolognese at home, and it is such a heartwarming thing to consume. There's a richness to it, and so on. So to have that on the front line must be a sort of added degree of comfort that is hard to come by in that situation.
As you say, it's such a good story around this, for want of a better term, food company.
Yeah.
That given the way that business now is, consumers are really understanding the mission of a business, the backstory, what it stands for. It kind of feels like the time is getting more and more right for CFT to be essentially a proper food retailer, to supplement, still running as a charity.
Yeah.
To supplement.
Yeah, look, if we could, we can't produce too much.
Is that
we'd
really
love
the
to
case?
produce enough to really supply more and more food banks. If we were producing enough, we could start thinking about supplying to prisons, to the armed forces, like we've done the front line in Ukraine, schools with venison. There's a lot of opportunity out there to provide more and more.
So is that really the case, that if every pheasant that was shot in the UK and every deer was supplied to the CFT, that would still not be enough?
From a food poverty point of view?
Yeah.
It can't be.
No, yeah. There would, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't cover all food poverty.
How many people in food poverty?
I can't remember. I don't know what the figure is.
I remember an 8 million stat.
I'm a few years out of Parliament now, but
I remember an 8 million stat a while back.
Yeah, and we've provided 7 million meals in the last 10 and a half years.
Yeah. Crikey.
The stat we know about is that game consumption is the equivalent of 1 day of chicken consumption, right?
It's something like that. Yeah, I think we got our numbers a bit wrong when we were talking about that. Louisa posted a correction on when we spoke about that.
Am I about to be corrected again?
No, because I can't remember what Louisa's correction was.
But you're acknowledging that there was a correction.
We're acknowledging there was a correction.
The point being, it would not take long for everybody to eat all the pheasants. So yeah, makes
it just
sense.
feels like we're such an open door with this thing, and
can I be Nick Robinson for a moment?
Oh, those 8 o'clock starts. Yeah, it was the 8:10 in the morning when you knew. Yeah.
I was reading the text of Andy Burnham's speech yesterday, and amongst all the other stuff, he talked about public procurement, and you just talked about schools and prisons and the armed forces and stuff. This sort of devolution of decision making. And this idea of focusing on British supplies and so on feels like maybe a bit of an open door for the game industry. But at the same time, if it is, I don't know what the detail is, but if it is a question of having to negotiate with each individual local authority over this stuff rather than one big Whitehall department, it feels like it could go one way or the other. I'm interested in your take.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how some of what was said yesterday transpires through to reality. I was involved in the localism bill where we devolved power from central government to local government back in 2010, 2012, and I was in that department then for 4 years while we were devolving power to local authorities. But then if I look back at the sort of second half of our time in government, power started to ease back into the centre, because what happens for politicians in London is if a local areas start making decisions they don't agree with, but you're still the parliamentarian who's got to go to the dispatch box and defend what you didn't do,
Yes.
you start going, well, then I want the power to make that decision. So the reality, as somebody who is mayor in a region wanting that devolved power, I totally understand. It'd be interesting to see how that develops when he is the one in the centre as Prime Minister who holds that power, and how much he's prepared to give up when he realises he's still going to be the one on the 8 to 10 with Nick Robinson having to answer what somebody he's never met or heard of has done. So I've a slight caution around their actual delivery, because the Labour Party have generally not been good at devolution. But, if I'm going to be positive about it, then if we can see that kind of devolution happen, which I think would be a good thing for the UK generally, actually. We've got to trust
the focus
local
on
areas to make
British
those
suppliers
decisions.
as well, I think is...
absolutely. And we've got to trust local authorities. But that will then be up to all of us to make that case in each local area and understand you're not going to be dealing with one. But then there's an upside to that. I mean, some areas won't want to do it, some will. But if you have it all in one place centrally, it's a yes or no.
Yeah.
At least this way, there is a chance of and the more you get, the more. And in local government, they do all come together quite regularly at various conferences and things. You get 2 or 3 areas saying, "Oh, we've done this with whoever, the Country Food Trust or whatever charity. It's worked really well for us." Then the other area goes, "Oh, well, we'll have a look at that."
Yeah.
Best practice does spread around quite quickly, so there's a good opportunity there for the countryside.
Yeah, I'm really interested, particularly. I mean, you're not quite at this stage yet, are you? But I mean, we have to select what the kids are going to have for lunch.
Oh, really?
On an app. And reading the choices makes me feel very sad, because it's
Turkey Twizzlers.
Not quite as bad as that, but there's a lot of pizza, there's a lot of breaded this, and I just know that it's all processed frozen crap, and it makes me feel miserable.
The power of the local power is strong. So people look to ministers, the Prime Minister or MPs even. But having been on both sides of this, if you are a member of Parliament and you've got a council of 20, 30 councillors, whatever, or more, and all of your group are saying to you, "This is really good, you should be doing this," you listen. Because first of all, they're in the community. Yeah. Secondly, they are your team. When you come up for reselection, they're the people who are going to choose who the next MP is. So local communities, shoots, people in country sports, getting involved and persuading people in local government is really valuable, because they are the foundation of what leads up to central government. Maybe because I came from local government, I see it that way, but I've seen it with other MPs who have never been in local government. They suddenly realise their councillors are really important. So having that local engagement does matter, and it can be hugely beneficial, because it will feed through.
I keep hearing this theme. It's so important. Local engagement, local government, getting local MPs out, just doing all that sort of stuff to start to sway.
And also, if you're a member of Parliament, you're visiting a food bank, which you will visit food banks, and that food bank is saying, by the way, these people, that the local shoot have given us, we've got this food from the Country Food Trust, and it's come from the local shoot. That's a really positive message for the
because next time they're putting their vote down on the latest sort of animal rights bill or whatever, they're going to go, hold on a second. Yeah, I'm literally saying that they're not going to have any of that meat.
Yeah, and so, look, some people will have
I'd rather my constituents go hungry. Is quite a challenging.
Exactly, yeah. So some people will have a view and maybe genuinely ill-informed in the sense, and I don't mean that in a critical way, I mean just genuinely don't know. So we have a duty to help them understand how this cycle works in a positive way. Yeah. And at least they might then just think twice about, this is how the food gets on the table.
And that's a way of reaching the MPs with an urban constituency, because as you said, lots of rural MPs sort of get it, or at least understand rather better. They might not get it, but they have an understanding. Whereas the urban MPs are just that one step removed from all of it.
I've got to ask you a question that's come up in some pods recently. The sort of three-legged stool, as the GWCT put it in shooting, is the environmental, the social, and the economic benefit of shooting. Yeah, I've sort of been a little bit outspoken, shock horror, recently about the idea that I think the economic argument is the weakest of the three, but I think there's been instances, probably if you look back over the last 20 years, the economic argument was often used first. But I think that is changing. What's your opinion as an MP?
Former MP.
Former MP with an MP's
free
recovery with an MP's hat on, someone in public office. What's your opinion of those three arguments in the order in which they matter when push comes to shove?
What was the third one? Environment, economy, and
it's social.
Social.
So I think this falls in social, right?
Yeah.
Environmental impact and then economic impact.
Yeah. So I think I actually lean to your view. I think the economic probably does come third for most. I may not like to admit it, but it does. And the reason I think is growing because of the way we live our lives. We live our lives through social media. Digital media 24/7. So, and I think we're seeing this in the current government and probably to the extent, certainly in the back end of mine, it's about a vibe. And the economic argument is a technical argument. And one of the things I think I saw, actually part of the Brexit debate, was there was an emotive argument against what people would argue was a logical, technical argument. An emotion will win every time.
Yeah.
So I think the economic argument, as powerful as it is, and I think there is a powerful economic argument, I think that I've made the case myself around the value to a community, to its economy, particularly in rural economies. When I shot in Norfolk, the local pub relied on tourists through the summer and through the winter. It was the shooting, the community.
That's almost a social argument.
Yeah,
I agree.
You can argue it either way. Yeah. No, I agree. And there's places I've shot in, particularly rural parts of the north of England, where the entire community relies on country sports as for the economy. But to most MPs, that isn't going to drive their decision. It will be around the vibe of what they ultimately, as members of parliament, they rely on getting re-elected.
Yeah,
and the same for local councillors. And whether you see that as a positive thing or not, the reality is you have to get re-elected. So you're going to think about what is going to help you, what works for your community, and what's going to help you get re-elected. So the emotive, environmental, social argument, I think, is more powerful. So, for example, if you think about the hunting debate that's live at the moment, I think there's a very, very strong economic argument. But I personally think the more persuasive argument is, what are you going to do about thousands and thousands of poor dogs and horses who will therefore be redundant? Are you arguing that to protect
the fox,
you want to? But anyway, we banned fox hunting, and I know some would argue there's the odd fox, but you've got thousands of dogs. They are not pets. They're not going to end up
literally to ban trail hunting.
If you ban trail hunting, there is a big economic argument that absolutely stacks up. But as a member of parliament, what's more powerful, I think, is the argument around all these horses, all these dogs. And because if you're environmentally friendly and you believe in wildlife, you value. You're against trail hunting, but what's your value on these dogs and horses? So that emotive social argument, I think, is more powerful.
I think you've nailed the best defence of trail hunting I've heard in a long time, which is turn it on its head. Because it's such a get-out, because we all know that the trail hunting debate is literally a sort of strange cover-up for a bit of an attack on a
there's no question
on
it really
class.
This is a class.
Yeah. So the
without any understanding of the people who really take part in hunting, it's not a class thing as it happens, but the perception.
It's perception. So your argument, therefore, is to a urban MP saying, "Look, I'm not really sure of the specifics of this debate. It seems to me to be rather nuanced, but actually, there's one thing staring right out at me. Then I wish to abstain my vote, maybe even at best, to just say, look, these animals." I just can't bring myself to be the one that gets all of them. Yeah.
But you get these weird. So actually, you can edit this out because it'd probably be too. But I would just tell you what I've always thought was one of my more amusing experiences of canvassing. I was door knocking in Great Yarmouth in the 2015 general election on the Tuesday before polling day, 2 days before polling day, and we're in a very, very, very urban area. There is no hunt in Great Yarmouth, and an area of Galston, and we were delivering knock-up leaflets, as we call them, which is please remember to vote in 2 days' time, in a pretty safe Labour ward. And we were doing it because the Labour Party in Great Yarmouth at that time, if I delivered leaflets in their ward, thought I was focused on their ward, and it distracted them from where I didn't want them to be. So we were doing it. I can give that away now. I'm not staying for election. But anyway, we'd done these leaflets. Anyway, a lovely old guy comes out of his house We've moved on a couple of doors. And he says, "Oh, excuse me. You're that Mr. Lewis, aren't you?" I'm sort of slight trepidation because you never know where this is going to go.
Which way it's going to go.
Yeah, that's me. He said, look, I just want to let you know. He said, I had the Labour Party knock on my door earlier today asking if I'd vote for them. Now, to me, that was interesting to tell me the Labour Party don't know who their voters are, because by that time I know who's likely to vote for me because I've done all my research. And in this election, I should just say as well, about a week before, the Labour Party in Great Yarmouth had taken a double-page spread, centre-page spread in the newspaper against me with all these thumbnails of people who are against me, which was basically all the Labour councillors and their friends, because of fox hunting, because I was pro-fox hunting.
Right.
I don't know what they based that on, because I don't remember there being a debate in Parliament or anything, but anyway, apparently I was pro-fox hunting, which I am actually pro-hunting. But anyway, but they'd done a double-page spread, and that was it. There was nothing about Great Yarmouth, just, So anyway, he said to me, he said, I said to the lady who knocked on my door, when he described the lady, I knew exactly who it was. He said, I said to her, well, actually, no, I'm not voting Labour. I'm a Conservative. I vote Conservative. He said, that seemed to really annoy her. And she said, well, how can you possibly vote Conservative? You've got this guy, he's from London originally. He's in Parliament all week. He's not here enough. He's not really one of us. Because my predecessor had been born there, schooled there, worked there, councillor there, etc. Although my family had a business there years ago, I wasn't from Great Yarmouth,
Yeah.
And he said, I said to him, well, and he's useless. He hasn't done anything for Great Yarmouth. I said to him, well, actually, I think he's a pretty good MP. And even if he wasn't, I'm a Conservative, so I'm going to vote for him. He said, that really annoyed her. And she turned around and said, and he's a murderer. Why would you vote for a murderer? And he said, I turned around and said, well, hold on. He said, that got my attention. He said, because I thought, how can you be a... He said, so I haven't heard that. What do you mean he's a murderer? He said, well, he wants to murder foxes. Do you want an MP who's going to murder foxes? He said, and I said to him, well, as a retired gamekeeper, yes, I do. He said, that really annoyed us, so I thought best to shut the door.
I can tell you right now, that's staying in.
And that is in about the most urban part of any constituency you could wish to imagine. It was just, and I just thought I'd love to be a fly on the wall that particular councillor's house that night.
It's amazing.
The whole murderer
and we won that division in the end as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I won every polling district that year. So
oh, well done. I mean, the murderer argument is ludicrous. If that
that's how she described me. Yeah,
but if that's the defence, I mean, like, she's a murderer for driving a car down the road
in a constituency that didn't have a hunt. I mean, it was just. Yeah. But that was how these things can rile people, and no understanding, as I say, of what and in Norfolk, which is basically a rural county.
Yeah,
and parts of Great Yarmouth as a constituency has got. Effectively, it's got three parts to it. You've got this Great Yarmouth, the town, and Galston, which is very, very urban. And you've got around it like a horseshoe, which is a mixture of an area around Galston and the area around that where people are, they're the teachers, the doctors, sort of the people who are working. Then you've got a northern part, Caister, of this horseshoe, which is basically a retirement village. I'm being very generalistic because I'm unfair here. Please don't write in about it. But then wrapping around that horseshoe of the sort of suburban area, if you like, is a very, very rural area. It's all the farms. 25% of all the black currency in Marbina come from Great Yarmouth.
Grown by my uncle.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I went to see it. Amazing. And the last celery that... certainly back then, that is on sale that's UK grown in supermarkets comes from Great Yarmouth. Walkers, McCain's. There's a huge amount of agriculture there as well, and yet a lot of that of the Labour Party in the town of Great Yarmouth, which is where the folks had no understanding or connection to that rural community that's in its own constituency. That they thought a double page spread on fox hunting. Well, what was bizarre to me was if you're urban, fox hunting didn't mean anything, and if you're rural, then what's this all about? It was a bizarre thing to do, but it's an emotive. My point with that is it's emotive.
Yeah.
And therefore, the economic argument, as valid and as correct as it can be, and I'm a firm believer in the economic arguments of country sports and the rural side of that for the rural economy. Actually, to persuade people, you've got to find the emotive point.
It's the story.
Yeah, so
it's always the story.
As you rightly pointed out, the hotels is a great one, especially in the southwest and in North Yorkshire and stuff. That is an economic argument, but it's an emotive one because no one wants to see those places disappear. They don't want to see people out of jobs, and that's when it becomes a social argument. So I think that's
Did you hear Barney talking about this on
Go on.
Friday. He was saying that his shoot, I don't know if I can broadcast this actually, but we'll say it anyway. I'm sure he'll be fine. He's been on the podcast. He was saying that his shoot spends roughly £1 million a year with local businesses. And that is not insignificant. But I think
that's ridiculous.
But at a nationwide level, when you say 2.2 billion, compared to all the other stuff, it's really insignificant. But somewhere like Stockton, which is, pretty remote for that part of England, there's not a lot of other stuff going on locally. There's no big industry in Wiltshire, really.
Yeah.
So, that £1 million that Barney's spending at the mechanics, having his Polarises fixed or whatever it is that he's spending the money on, the game feed suppliers, etc., it's all going round and round. He employs 10 keepers.
Okay, yeah, it is 2 shoots.
But that comes back to my what I would say is my point is around, it's local.
Yeah.
And there's an old phrase, an American, all politics is local. And it is local. So you're correct. On the national stage, if you're talking to a minister, they've got much bigger economic arguments to make. But in certain local communities, it is the key issue.
Yeah.
And it has an emotive point as well. So that's why I think local matters.
I think we've covered everything there's so many fascinating discussions in this, and I hope that people who have listened to this can continue these discussions on the gun bus,
Yeah.
Not in the car.
I think before we wrap it all up, one final point just to reiterate, because you've said this already, but if people listening to this can do one thing to help Country Food Trust this coming season, what would that be?
Get more shoots donating to their birds and the funding to process those birds to the Country Food Trust. And actually just become more aware of what we do and why we do it.
And can I actually clarify a point there for anyone that might be confused? If they donate to the Country Food Trust, they are supporting local game dealers because you are using them.
Yes, we use local
it's
game
not
dealers,
one or the other.
No.
This is a double win.
Yeah, and this is actually, and you just made that's a really important point. And one of the things I found, I still struggle to get my head round, and I know our chief exec battles this every day, is gamekeepers sometimes, certainly not gamekeepers, the game dealers, we're perceived to be competition. We're not. We use the game dealers to work with us on this. So we're part of their ecosystem and delivering them.
It's
so
win-win.
Yeah, absolutely win-win. Yeah.
Great.
Fantastic.
Well, that needs to happen. Good.
Yeah.
Well, look, before we go, our final segment of the podcast is this. I think you know about it. It's we call it Desert Island Shooting, and the scenario is that the extinction level event asteroid is going to hit tomorrow. Your affairs are in order. Loved ones and enemies are reconciled. Dogs fed. Tomatoes are watered.
Yeah.
Your last day shooting begins how?
Oh, right. Sorry, no. Okay. I thought it was what would be my last weekend of shooting.
Yeah.
Well,
Go for it.
close enough.
Last weekend.
So my last weekend of shooting would be I would have the dogs and my wife with me. I'd have my kids in the field with me because they both actually are. My daughter's just started shooting and
how old are they?
My daughter's 22, my son's 25.
Fabulous.
Both are far too good at shots too quickly for my personal taste. It's like my son outshot me on a day this year, which was really brilliant, but also slightly.
I think it's a moment that will come for us all.
Yeah. The thing is, he does it with a lot less effort. But anyway, so we'd all be together, and I would take advantage of the guns on peg, super fast, supersonic private jet, because I would want to pull 3 things together, which is have a couple of drives on a shoot in Norfolk, which I spent a lot of time on and I love with some good Norfolk friends. We would then jet our way down to the south of England and go to Coombe Sydenham, which I think is one of the best shoots in the country. Great friend of mine has got that, and I just think that's a very, very. I mean, we're blessed across. There's great shoots across the UK, and I've been very lucky to shoot them as well. I love, and the people I shoot with in Coombe Sydenham is always a really
I love that area.
We're good friends and. Always a laugh and an amazing bird, one of those stratospheric birds that you generally. That's why I got called a coward for leaving a bird.
And so for those who don't know, what part of the world is this?
It's quite near. It's sort of between Western Supermare and
right.
It's sort of Exmoor Edge.
Yeah.
Devon Exmoor.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's an amazing shoot, and they do a fabulous job. And then I would, with a very similar group of friends, we would jump back on that supersonic jet and go and finish the day or have a day in Spain.
Fantastic.
Particularly in the middle of the winter, when you can go into Spain and be able to shoot in shirt sleeves again, is quite a nice, refreshing thing to do.
Yeah.
So
fair enough. And the whole family's on there with the dogs.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, I still, there's a particular day where at the end of a drive, on the final drive in Norfolk, in my constituency as well, this was quite near where I lived, I can remember at the end of the drive chatting to the host and the gamekeeper, and my dog sort of jumped over the ditch behind us in the field, ran into the other field. And I'm trying to carry on talking as if none of us have noticed this. And my pal, who was the host, said, "Oh, he's got," and the dog went. I'm like, "Oh, I thought he'd just run off," and he went way back, sort of field and a half away, and he picked a bird and brought it back. And the gamekeeper said that was the first bird shot on the drive. He's remembered that. I was as proud of that as almost anything.
That's amazing.
Oh wow!
And I still remember. I remember just.
What dogs have you got?
Black Labs. And
Nice.
that particular dog we lost a couple of years ago. He was a great gun dog. But I've got 2 Black Labs. I've got now a 10-year-old and a 1-year-old juvenile terrorist. who I'm slightly concerned about taking anywhere, because he's lovely, but he's got ADHD, I think.
Well, that's a fantastically varied shoot day that you're going on, because let's face it,
and that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Every day is different. Yeah.
Let's be honest. The birds in Norfolk, they're a particular type of bird.
Yep. The topography is
flat. Featureless. I can say it. My mum's from Norfolk. It's fine. But then you're heading off out to the southwest, where the birds are going to be a very different prospect. And then you're going to Spain, where they're going to be different again. So I think that's a really good use of that last. Yeah,
there'll be more similar
experience
in Spain to Norfolk than Exmoor.
Yeah, although there's a couple of drives where we go off in Spain that are high. They come off a cliff, so it's
Okay, nice.
Yeah, over the Navas.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Well, yeah, this is the great thing about shooting. All those 3 fit into the top 3.
Yeah, and I could name several. I mean, as I say, what I love most about shooting is I there's a day I did in Scotland once where a couple of drives didn't work. I had a bit of a night. I didn't have a great peg, and I didn't shoot many. But I think I shot 18 cartridges all day, and I'd gone there for that. I still had the most fantastic time because I was with great people in the most stunning scenery.
Yeah.
And that's what shooting and fishing, country sports take you to places with people that are great people to be with in amazing places.
It was one of the first comments I heard on the gun bus at Stockton on Friday, when that part of Wiltshire is just so beautiful. Oh. And someone was like, "God, it's just a pleasure to be out. You would never be here if you weren't shooting." Exactly. And it just made me laugh, because I hear it so often now, but now I'm sort of looking for it, and it's so true.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Good. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us, Brandon. It's been
incredibly generous with your time. Thank you so much for coming in.
And best of luck this year with the CFT.
Thank you.
We're all behind it, as you know, but I think if our listeners can help with that, then we're all onto a good thing as a result.
I'm sure they will. Right, before we go, all that remains for me to say is there's a final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas for us to resolve, or by sending us your unpopular opinions, or sharing your forgotten drives, or your podcast suggestions, or any of that good stuff. Drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we read it out in the next episode or any future episodes, we will send you some garters. Chris and I will be back in a couple of weeks' time with another special guest. I'll be back with Jake Avian and Sam before that. So until then, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.